Welcome to the Part S channel. Today we explain Genesis chapter 46 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're at an absolutely massive turning point in the biblical narrative here. Jacob, who is also known as Israel, is about to make a truly momentous decision. He's actually leaving the promised land of Canaan to go and reunite with his long-lost son, Joseph, down in Egypt. And this isn't just a simple change of address. This single massive move is going to completely shift the entire future of his family, and it literally lays the groundwork for the birth of a brand new nation.
So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. Context and divine permission. 2. The family leaves Canaan. 3. The 70 descendants listed. 4. The tearful father-son reunion. 5. Settlement strategy for Goshen. And finally, 6. Key lessons and recap. We will walk through the entire chapter methodically, verse by verse, so you won't miss a single thing.
All right, let's dive right into our first section, context and divine permission.
To really grasp what's happening here, we have to look closely at verse 1. Israel sets out with literally all his possessions, but before going all the way, he stops first at a place called Beersheba. Now, why Beersheba? Well, in Hebrew, Beersheba means the well of the oath or well of 7. This place has a deeply rooted historical connection to the promises God made to his father Isaac. What we're seeing here is Jacob showing a very real, very human moment of hesitation. He knows Canaan is the promised land, so packing up and leaving it, that's a terrifying prospect. He absolutely doesn't want to make this monumental geographical and spiritual shift without checking in with God first. So what does he do? He offers sacrifices. And then, moving into verses 2 through 4, we see God answer him in a vision at night. God calls out, "Jacob, Jacob." In the original Hebrew text, repeating a name twice like that isn't just for emphasis. It's a profound sign of endearment, of closeness, and of urgency. God steps in to provide the ultimate reassurance. He says, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there." God explicitly grants him permission to leave. He promises to go down to Egypt with him. He promises to surely bring his descendants back again. And then he offers this incredibly comforting personal promise that Joseph's own hand will close Jacob's eyes when he eventually passes away. With that, Jacob has the total, absolute clarity he needs to move forward.
Armed with that divine reassurance, we move to section 2, the family leaves Canaan. Let's look at the actual physical logistics of this massive relocation.
In verses 5 through 7, we see this huge caravan mobilize. Jacob departs from Beersheba. The text is very specific here. It notes that the sons of Israel carried their elderly father Jacob, their little children, and their wives. And they didn't just walk or ride regular donkeys. They traveled in specific transport wagons sent directly by the Pharaoh. The Hebrew word used here is agalots. Now, agalot doesn't just mean a simple wooden cart. It refers to heavy, royal transport carts that literally only the Pharaoh himself could authorize. Think of it like a royal motorcade or VIP transport being sent to pick them up. It highlights the royal red carpet being rolled out for this Hebrew family. And they certainly didn't leave empty-handed. They brought all their cattle, their livestock, and basically all the goods and wealth they'd accumulated over all those years in Canaan. Jacob and absolutely all his offspring went down to Egypt together as one massive group.
Which naturally brings us to our third section, a highly structured genealogy. Starting in verse 8, the text takes a deliberate pause to meticulously document the exact roots of this future nation. So verses 8 through 25 go ahead and group these descendants according to the 4 matriarchs of the family. The text keeps a very strict chronological and maternal order, which honestly makes this huge list of names much easier to digest. First up, we have the descendants of Leah. This includes Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and their daughter Dinah, totaling 33 souls. Next, we see the descendants of Zilpah, who was Leah's handmaid. This branch includes Gad and Asher and their children, bringing us to a total of 16. Then we look at the descendants of Rachel, that's Joseph and Benjamin, and their respective children, totaling 14 souls. And finally, the descendants of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali and their children, making up 7 souls.
Now, right after that list, we come to verse 26. This verse actually confuses a lot of people, but if we read it closely, the text is being incredibly precise. It states that all the souls belonging to Jacob that physically came into Egypt, meaning the people who came directly out of his loins, and specifically excluding his sons' wives, numbered exactly 66 persons traveling on that actual journey. So, How on earth do we reach the famous number 70 that everyone always talks about? Well, verse 27 explains the math perfectly. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. To those 66 direct descendants physically traveling on the road, we first add Jacob himself. That's 67. Then we add Joseph, who is obviously already down in Egypt. That's 68. And finally, we add the two sons born to Joseph in Egypt, Manasseh and Ephraim. 66 plus 4 gives us exactly 70 members of the house of Jacob who ended up in Egypt. And just as a quick aside, in biblical literature, the number 70 is a huge deal. It often signifies completeness or a totally unified entity. So, 70 represents the complete, unified seed of the nation that is about to incubate and grow inside the borders of Egypt.
All right, let's move to our fourth section, which is honestly the emotional climax of the whole narrative, the tearful father-son reunion. After decades of agonizing grief, the family finally arrives in Egyptian territory.
The text lays out the exact logistics of this moment step by step in verses 28 and 29. First, Jacob sends his son Judah ahead of the caravan as an emissary to Joseph. In the simple, literal understanding of the Hebrew text, Judah is sent as the advance team to literally point the way or secure their specific living arrangements in the region of Goshen before the massive caravan shows up. Second, the very moment Joseph hears of their arrival, he immediately makes his royal chariot ready. Think about this. He is the second most powerful man in the world, but he doesn't sit back on his throne and wait for his elderly, exhausted father to navigate the bustling Egyptian capital. No way. He hitches his own chariot and rides out to Goshen himself. And then, step 3, the meeting. When Joseph finally appears before his father, the text says he threw his arms around him and wept on his neck for a long time. It's just this profound, overwhelming release of over 20 years of sorrow, trauma, and separation.
And then, in verse 30, we get Jacob's raw, totally unfiltered reaction. He looks at Joseph and says, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." I mean, wow. This brilliantly captures the sheer relief and the total, absolute fulfillment of a father who had lived with the agonizing daily belief that his beloved son had been torn to pieces by wild animals. Seeing Joseph alive, standing right in front of him, completely restores Jacob's spirit. It's as if his life's journey, with all its struggles, finally feels complete.
But, as amazing as that moment is, the chapter doesn't end on just tears and hugs. Real life has to continue. So we pivot immediately to section 5, settlement strategy for Goshen.
In verses 31 through 34, we watch Joseph instantly switch gears from a weeping son back into a highly pragmatic, brilliant ruler. He sits down and carefully coaches his brothers on exactly what to say to the authorities. Like a master strategist formulating a plan, he tells them, "Look, I am going to go up and speak to Pharaoh and let him know you have all arrived. I will explicitly tell him that you are shepherds who brought your flocks and herds." Then he gives his brothers a strict, almost word-for-word script. He says, "When Pharaoh calls you in and asks about your occupation, you must answer exactly like this. Your servants have tended livestock from our boyhood on, just as our fathers did."
Now, you might be wondering why such incredibly specific coaching. Why did Joseph, the prime minister of Egypt, so badly want his rough-around-the-edges brothers to emphasize to the Pharaoh that they were lifelong shepherds by trade?
Well, the answer lies at the very end of verse 34. Joseph tells them it is so they will be allowed to settle exclusively in the region of Goshen because, and I quote, "all shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians." The Hebrew word used here for detestable or abomination is tuvah. It shows just how intensely the local Egyptians disliked shepherds. It was a massive cultural taboo. And right here, this is Joseph's political brilliance fully at work. By loudly and proudly stating a profession that carries this profound cultural stigma, Joseph ensures that his family won't be forced to integrate or assimilate into mainstream Egyptian society. His plan is airtight. The Egyptians won't want to live near them. Because of this, they will be happily and safely isolated in the fertile, separate land of Goshen, completely protecting their unique family identity, their culture, and their beliefs for generations to come.
Having walked through the entire chapter step by step, let's now look at section 6, key lessons and recap.
Here are the practical, everyday life lessons we can draw purely from the literal step-by-step events we just read. First, just like Jacob stopping at Beersheba to offer sacrifices despite his fear, we learn the immense value of seeking divine guidance before making massive, intimidating life changes. Second, that highly detailed genealogy we walked through, it reminds us to actively value our family roots, our origins, and the power of reunification. Third, the intensely weeping reunion between Jacob and Joseph shows us that it is incredibly healthy and frankly necessary to express genuine, deep emotion with the people we love. Don't hold it back. And finally, Joseph's brilliant coaching about Goshen teaches us the crucial importance of planning strategically to protect our family's future and our core values in a complex world.
To quickly recap the literal narrative arc we just covered so it sticks with you, Jacob halts his journey at Beersheba, where God beautifully reassures him in a night vision that it is totally safe to go down to Egypt. Then the text carefully lists the 70 distinct souls of the unified house of Israel who make this historic migration. After over 20 agonizing years apart, Jacob and Joseph share a deeply tearful, healing reunion right there in Goshen. And immediately after, Joseph establishes a highly clever political strategy using their occupation as shepherds to secure a safe, isolated, and prosperous home for his people.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought to chew on. In this single chapter, we see Jacob relying entirely on deep faith and God's spiritual vision to move forward, while at the exact same time, Joseph uses brilliant, highly practical political planning to physically secure their new home in Goshen. So, how do we balance profound faith with practical, strategic planning in our own lives? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.